Hello, my name is Thomas Rushock and this is my analysis on war poetry. The two poems I have chosen are Christ and the Soldier and The War Works Hard. These poems both deal with the atrocities of war, something that has and still affects millions of people around the globe. Despite being a gross, ugly and horrific thing, war has managed to time and time again inspire the creation of one of literature's most beautiful art forms, poetry. Those who have experienced the atrocities of war have been shaped by it, allowing them to create some of the most beautiful poems ever made. The first poem I will be analysing is Christ and the Soldier and was written by Siegfried Sassoon, a man who fought in the First World War. The poem is heavily anti-religion and anti-war. Unlike many anti-religion poems, this one does not deal with the theme of the church imposing its belief onto others, and instead approaches the idea that Jesus is cruel and a hypocrite. The poem tells the story of a man who was in the midst of a battlefield in World War I. He speaks to Jesus Christ, begging him to end all this pointless fighting. Jesus in turn questions the man's faith, asking, "Can you put no trust in my known word that scribe's faithful head? Am I not resurrection, life and light?" The man responds in one of the most powerful and well-written lines I have ever read. "Heal me if you will. Maybe there's comfort when a soul believes in mercy, and we need it in these hells. But be you for both sides? I'm paid to kill, and if I shoot a man his mother grieves, does that come into what your teaching tells?" The man asked Jesus to justify the war, to which he did not respond. The poem ends with the man running into the battlefield, questioning why he was ever born. The poem uses imagery such as, "Above that hill the sky was stained like rust with smoke, in sullen daybreak flaring red the guns were thundering bombardment's blight," and "Machine guns rattled from below the hills, high bullets flicked and whistled through the leaves, and smoke came drifting from exploding shells." This gives the reader a picture of a bloody and violent battlefield, which heavily contradicts what a visit from Jesus is generally depicted as, and serves to emphasize the point that he is neither as graceful nor fair as depicted in the Bible. The poem attempts to have the reader empathize with the man and gain anger towards the Son of God. This is done through the theme of hopelessness and being forsaken. Even though I'm atheist, this poem still manages to make me feel anger towards a man I don't believe. I think that that's an incredibly impressive thing to accomplish, and view Christ and the Soldier as an amazing work of art. My second poem is The War Works Hard by Dunya Mikhail, which is also an anti-war poem, but is presented in a very different style from Christ and the Soldier. At first glance, the poem appears to be pro-war, with the first line of the poem even being, "How magnificent war is," but as I mentioned earlier, this isn't the case. Throughout the poem, events that would be considered bad are presented as positives. This can be heard in the lines, "Summoned rain from the eyes of mothers," and "It inspires tyrants to deliver long speeches." This is done in a way that mocks war and those who support it, making fun of the way people try to look for the good in something that should only really be viewed as a terrible thing. It uses short lines to allow the poem to be read in a jolly fashion, something that's not usually appropriate when talking about war. Some lines are a lot vaguer in their anti-war message than others. This includes, "It produces the most questions in the minds of children," and "builds the new houses for the orphans." On their own, these lines aren't particularly bad, but when put into the context of war, their meaning changes to a much more sinister one. All lines in the poem are also linked together by its opening and closing sentences. These two lines show no signs of negativity towards war. Everything in between them, the meat of the poem, reveals its true intentions. These two poems are quite different in many ways, and yet they still share some similarities. Although more predominant in The War Works Hard, both use anti-war themes throughout them. This can be said about anti-religion as well, though Christ and the Soldier delves much deeper into this subject than The War Works Hard. While Christ and the Soldier tells the story of a soldier, The War Works Hard focuses more on war as a whole. It is also presented in a much less grim and more joyful way than Christ and the Soldier. These different tomes both complement the poems and also help to differentiate them from each other. All in all, these poems have one major thing in common. They both manage to express their message across exceptionally. Thank you for watching my poetry analysis, and have a good day.